Alright, so I wanted to do a video here. I am on a Facebook group that's called Can I Have It Vintage Tool Auctions. They have auctions during the weekends and buy it nows throughout the week where they just sell all vintage hand tools, no power tools allowed. The only modern tools are really like the Nielsen's, the Veritas. But I've been getting a lot of guys on there that are relatively new to woodworking, and they're just getting frustrated when it comes to sharpening. They've tried everything, they just can't get it right, they can't figure it out. So I've been shooting a lot of individual videos for them, so I figured, let's just make a YouTube video. So when they ask, I can send it to them and all of the information is in there. Probably even more information that I'd be able to include in an individual video. So the first thing that I want to say about sharpening is don't get crazy. Don't get too extreme with it. Keep it simple, because all you're doing is you're taking a flat side and a beveled side and making a point. That's it. Any method that you choose works. Any of these methods can take a flat side and a beveled side, create a burr, take that burr off, and make a point. That's it. They all work. Pick one and get good at it. They all have their upsides. They all have their downsides. When I first started out with sharpening, I couldn't figure it out either, so don't be discouraged. I wasn't able to figure it out. I tried everything. I started off with sandpaper, and then I went to diamond plates, and then I went to these are the Sharpening ceramic stones, and then I went back to diamond plates, and then ceramic stones, and recently it was natural stones. I got into naturals. I've also tried water stones. They're my least preferred. That's why you don't see one on the bench, only because you got to flatten them a lot. But what I learned is they all do the same thing. They're taking a flat side, a beveled side, creating a burr, making it sharp, making a point. That's it. So to briefly go over the different methods that you have here, everybody's heard of not everybody, I'm sure a lot of people have heard about the scary sharp method. That's when you use sandpaper. Some guys use wet and dry sandpaper, so the water clears the grits if it starts getting clogged. Some people use the sandpaper dry, and then they have an air compressor to just blow out those grits when it starts getting too crowded in there. The only downsides to sandpaper, in my opinion, is they don't last long, so you got to replace the papers a lot, and the chisel heats up, or the tool heats up, or whatever. So you got to keep an eye on that. You constantly got to make sure that you're not going to mess up any of the temper or the heat treat or anything like that on the steel. So sandpaper, I do use it. I use it to flatten the backs of the irons when I have a new one or I mess something up or whatever. I keep sandpaper around for that. Sometimes I use it to regrind the primary because it's fast. It's definitely fast, but I don't use it as my finishing stone. So then next we came to the diamond plates. I like diamond plates. You don't have to flatten them. They last for a pretty good time, but they're expensive. If you're going to go with Trend or DMT or all these other brands are out there, Atom is the other, Atoma, whatever it is, whatever the other one is, they're pricey, they're expensive. You don't need to pay that much for one. Amazon has some really good companies out there that are affordable. Just know that they're not going to last as long. So if you buy a stone and it's $20 and it lasts you a year, I'd call that a success. Compared to spending, what, $200+ for one of these things. And then I don't know, you mess it up somehow or something. But so that's kind of the only downside of diamond plates. The other thing that I realize is they don't really work on all steels. I've noticed that some stones work better on certain steels. I'm not saying go out and buy multiples. Definitely not that. It works, just not as quick. The other thing with diamond plates is they get clogged. So you can see this one's pretty dirty. So what I do, I forgot to grab the eraser. I have an actual school eraser, but you can take a pencil eraser and you can clean out those grits. So if you keep going like that, it's clearing it out. Because all this dirtiness that means that it's getting clogged and it's not going to cut as successfully. So you're going to want to make sure that you keep these things clean. But these are a good option for people too, because they stay flat. You don't have to worry about that, and you can get them cheap. Then we go to the ceramic stones. I'm going to lump water stones into this too. I know that they're different. So with ceramic stones, they're splash and go. You throw water on them, you go about your day. Water stones, you actually have to soak. You have to put them in a tub of water until you stop seeing the bubbles. You pull them out. I've never used Japanese tools or Japanese steel, but from what I've heard, they have to use water stones. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I've heard. The reason I don't like water stones is because you have to flatten them very, very often. I was sharpening a 3/4 chisel and just shining up the primary bevel, and it was out of flat again. So I had to flatten it before I went to the next chisel. And then sometimes in the middle of that chisel, I mean, maybe that was just a bad water stone that I had. It was a king water stone. Just didn't like them, mainly because you had to flatten them a lot. I didn't like having to wait for it to soak in the water, and they weren't the cheapest either. But they still work. If you like water stones and you enjoy that and they work for you, use them. That's perfectly fine. I can't say that any of these are better than the other. So when it comes to ceramic stones, I love these ones a lot. That's why I still have one. I have the ceramic stones in, lower grit. So I have it in 120 and 320. You don't have to flatten them as often. They do need flattened, not as often. You can use a granite plate. You can use a diamond plate. If you have two of these, you can rub them in the water together, and that flattens it for you. The other trick that I'd recommend is taking a Sharpie and drawing diagonal lines this way and then go the opposite way like that. So that way when you do sharpen, you can see where you're flat and where you still need to keep going. You can also keep a straight edge handy, but I don't want you to get obsessive with it because I was kind of obsessive with it. You do want to check to make sure that you're flat and you're still okay to go. But when you flatten these stones, when you're lapping these flat, same with the water stones, same with natural stones, you're going to naturally develop a hump in the middle. That's okay. You don't need to try to chase dead flat. You don't have to chase dead flat at all. Just to explain why that happens, so watch my middle fingers right here that are in the middle of the stone. So you can see them line up, okay? They don't travel as far. So they are traveling the width of the stone, but these are traveling farther. You see what I mean? So that's why that hump gets developed there, because the outsides are getting sharpened more. Because when you are lapping, I guess that was a bad example. When you're lapping, you're trying to keep it on the stone. Okay, so if you have a little plate like this, you're trying to keep them together as best as possible. This is only moving very slightly. So it's only moving very slightly in there. Okay, so that's why you're going to develop the hump in the middle. But that's okay. It doesn't affect anything. It happens on my natural stones. It happens on these stones. I've never had any issue with it. The sharpen stones, they can get a little bit expensive depending on how high of a grit that you want to go to. We'll get into grits in a little bit. But other than that, I like these stones. They're awesome. They slurry up real well. And then if you ever need to, if you notice that it's just not cutting as well as it used to, you do something that's called dressing it. So you just take a piece of sandpaper, you rub it over the top, and you go back to sharpening. It just creates a fresh layer for you. On the 120 and the 320, I use 80 grit. You could probably use whatever grit on whatever stone you want. You'll see that it might be a little bit toothier for a little bit, and then it'll calm down and go back to normal. So just keep that in mind. Try it out. I haven't tested all the grits and all the different sandpapers to see what lines up because I keep it simple, which is the whole point of this video. Keep sharpening simple. Then we get into natural stones, which is not simple. That's a whole rabbit hole in and of itself that I fell into very deeply, and I'm trying to sell out all the stones that I bought because I thought you had to have all of them. Same with these. I thought you had to have all of these grits. Again, we'll get into that later. Natural stones, they can be expensive. This is a leopard Washita. This is what I use daily. I just like it. I think they're cool, and that's why I like natural stones. I like the grain on them. I like the patterns on them. You can try different ones. You know, they're just neat because they're rocks. They're rocks that somebody mined, you know, how many years ago, and then they cut it into a bench stone size, and people use them. And I just think that's cool. Like, who knows who used this before me? It's just neat to think about. But they don't really have coarser grits. For a long time I searched. I wanted to find a coarse grit so I could throw all these away. I wanted a natural stone that could flatten the backs of my irons, regrind the primary, do everything. Not a thing. Not a thing from what I've searched. You can get some coarser stones, but it would take you a very long time to flatten the back and regrind a primary on them. So keep that in mind. When it comes to diamond plates, when it comes to natural stones, when you flatten them, can't use a diamond plate. You're going to destroy your diamond plate. I've heard of people using it before. I definitely don't recommend it. Get a piece of glass, some silicone grit powder, put that on there, rub the stone on it until it's flat. I have a granite plate with some silicone powder, do the same thing. So this is going to start getting into grit. When I lap this, I use 90 grit silicone powder. That doesn't mean that it's 90 grit. That's not how it works with natural stones. It's just roughing it up, and that's the grit that I like on the stone. Okay, but it's not 90. That doesn't mean it's a 90 grit stone now. It's kind of the same with these ones too. So if you use 80 grit sandpaper on this, it doesn't mean now it's an 80 grit stone. It doesn't work like that. It's just dressing it up, getting you a fresh layer so things cut faster and have a little bit more tooth for a little bit. So yes, both of these get dressed. Now when it comes to grit, this creates a lot of arguments all the time. I know one guy, love him to death. He's awesome. He sharpens to 60,000. I don't have the time for that. I don't want to sharpen to 60K. Other guys I know, they sharpen to 20 or 25 or 15 or, you know, all these crazy high grits, and they get the mirror polish and it looks pretty. But mirror does not mean sharp. You can have a very, very sharp tool and it's not a mirror. So know that right away. Shiny does not mean sharp. So grit-wise, what I do, I don't have anything over 1,000. You might consider some of the natural stones a little bit higher than that, but for my basic tool use, I don't go over 1,000. My highest diamond plate's 1,000. I don't use any of the Sharpens for my final finishing stone because I don't want to buy 1,000 grit stone when I have the natural stones. But sometimes I like using the plates. That's usually what I use to show examples to people of how to sharpen, so that's one of the reasons that I keep it around. I sharpen to 1,000, I hit the strop, and I go to town. I've never had any issues with it. I get amazing shavings just like everybody else does. So the biggest thing to think about is if the higher the grit you go, the weaker your edge gets. So in my opinion, anything over 3,000 is just a waste of your time. Now, if you're going to do a couple of very, very fine paring cuts and you need perfect cuts and yada yada, bump it up. Go for it, absolutely. But just know that your edge isn't going to last as long. You might be able to do 3 swipes and then you're going to have to sharpen again. So that's kind of your preference. That's kind of up to you. That's your choice what you want to do. I'm just saying you don't have to, so don't get crazy about it. Don't think you have to spend hundreds of dollars on a finishing stone. The other thing that I want to mention is when I am using a tool and I notice it needs sharpened again, I don't go back all the way through. So I don't go through 120, 320, 500, 1,000, so on. I don't do that. I take this tool out, I take the iron out, I go to my station, I hit it on this stone, I hit the strop, and I go back to work. You don't have to go through all your progressions again because you're doing the micro bevels. If you don't want to do micro bevels, you're probably going to have to go through the progressions every time. Now, to explain how that works, I don't know if this is close enough. So I have the chisel here. Which way? There we go. I have the chisel here, and you can see the primary bevel. So if I just have the primary bevel, and this edge gets weak, I then have to sharpen the whole primary bevel again. Okay. But now if I have this primary bevel and I'm doing a micro bevel, and that micro bevel gets weak, I just do another one, and another one, and another one, and another one until, okay, finally you got to regrind the primary. It's going to happen. You're going to have to regrind the primaries no matter what. That's just how tools work. So on that note, when it comes to micro bevels and primary bevels, I don't want you guys to stress too much on the angles. That comes in time. You'll figure that out in time when you start experimenting and stuff like that. But when you're this new, just build things. Just build things, and you'll start figuring that out as you go. Bevels really don't matter if you're using a bench plane. If you're using a standard, regular angle bench plane, that bevel does not matter. The frog angle matters, and then if there's a back bevel on that iron, that's what matters. So if you're using a standard, doesn't matter. If you're using a low angle, then the bevel's going to matter because that's what's facing up. So if you have 25 degree, this is the Veritas one. I don't know if Lie-Nielsen has other irons for theirs or not. I know Stanley's is out there too, but if you have the 25 degree cutter in the low angle, that's for end grain. If you have the 38, that's the same as this. If you have the 50, you're basically just using a card scraper at that point. So for these ones, it matters, but if you're a couple degrees off, don't stress. If you have a 25 degree iron in there and you have a 27 degree micro bevel, you're fine. Don't worry about it. Just use the tool. Enjoy the tool. It's okay. When it comes to chisels, this was actually a recent adventure that I went on, and I can't even tell you how many chisels I bought and sold and yada yada. And what I learned is the only bevel that matters is your primary. I don't care what your micro bevel is. It doesn't matter. If your primary bevel is at 25, you're then going to go 26, 27, 28, 29, and then you're going to regrind. And then you'll go again, okay? 26, 27, do you see what I mean? If you go to 30, okay, you're going 31, 32, 33, 34, and then you're regrinding back to 30. So only the primary matters when you're doing micro bevels. If you're not doing micro bevels, you're going to want to keep it consistent at 25 to 30 every single time. Now, how do you choose which one? Man, I've looked this up, and I've watched videos, and I've talked to people, and I've gotten opinions, and I've done a lot. I've tried to figure this out a lot. And basically what it comes down to is preference and the chisel that you have. If you have a chisel that's a really hard steel and it can hold an edge at 25, go for it, buddy. If you see that you're getting some tear out with it, bump it up to 30. That's it. If you got a chisel, here's a good example. So I had a Swedish set of chisels. I have a Swedish set of chisels. They're at 25 degrees. I can I can chisel and grain, no problem. Hold an edge, they're awesome. I'm excited. I had a pair of Swiss chisels, and they were at 25 degrees, weren't holding an edge. So I bumped them up to 30, and then they were rocking, and then I really liked them. I have a set of Project Source from Lowe's chisels that I use for like bark removal and rough work. I don't even know what angle those are at because I sharpen them. I go, all right, let's go. You know what I mean? Because it doesn't matter. They still cut. It still cuts. It's just ease and cleanliness. Cleanliness, I don't want you to worry about too much. Okay? If you're doing a mortise or you're doing something like that, usually it's only that little top layer of grain that matters. When you start getting more and more experience, then you can try out different angles. But get your first set, figure out which angle works best for you and works best for what you do and what chisel you have. So, figure out the angle. If you see that you're losing your edge real fast and you want to keep it longer, bump the angle up a little bit more. If you learn that that's too tough to push and you don't want something that tough to push, put it back down. Who cares? You might have to sharpen a little bit more frequently than the other one. When I show you how to freehand sharpen, you're not going to care if you have to pause and go sharpen real quick and go back to work. Now, the other thing that I do want to mention, too, is when it comes to, like, standard, what you should do, okay? What I figured out is the majority of people have their bench chisels at 25 degrees for general use. 30 degrees is mortises and dovetails, maybe end grain, and then very, very fine paring. You might see them go to 20 degrees, maybe 25 degrees. That's about it. But just take your time, try it out, see what works for you. And I'm sorry if that sounded complicated. It's really not. Take your chisel, whatever degree it's at, try it. If it loses its edge fast, bump it up a little bit, go a little bit higher on those degrees, and then try it again. If you don't like how it performs then and you feel like it's too hard to push, bump it back down. Don't stress on angles. That's the other thing is everything can be fixed. This chisel, I don't even know how old it is, and I can definitely tell it was used, and I've used it, and I've regrind the primary, and I use this to practice sharpening and all that kind of stuff, and look how much life is left still. Okay? So don't stress. If you mess up on any of these sharpening parts, if you mess up an iron, if you hit the grinder wrong or you go too steep on the stone, it's okay. You've got a lot of life in these. Even the irons nowadays, you've got a lot of life. Even the old ones, you usually got a lot of life left in them. So don't stress. It's okay. If you need to go back to the grinder to fix it, that's okay. So what I want to do now is show you guys how to freehand sharpen. And I don't want this to scare you guys. When I first started, I said, I can't figure it out, I'm done. So then I bought an Eclipse jig off of Amazon, and I tried I don't remember which one it was. It was a blue one from Amazon, and then now I have the Veritas MK2, which I am keeping to regrind the primaries. But I gave up on myself. And I don't want you guys to give up on yourself, because I've watched many, 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 many videos of people hand sharpening, and they make it complicated. It's really simple. Really simple. Like I said in the beginning, you have a flat side and a bevel side, and all you're doing is making a point. That's it. Make a point. So I'm going to take you over to my sharpening station. I'm going to show you on the diamond plate. I'm not going to show you how we redo the primaries. I'm not going to do that part because that just takes way too long, and I definitely recommend a jig for primaries. I don't recommend trying to freehand a primary bevel, because you will mess it up and you will end up in the grinder. So freehanding, in my opinion, is only for micro bevels. If you're only going to do primaries, go watch a different video. This is for micro bevels. So I'll take you over there and I'll show you that now.
All right, so here we are. The first thing I am going to say, I do have practice irons. I did say it doesn't matter if you use, if you don't have any practice irons, that's fine. You can definitely use your regular irons and go. If you do have spare irons and you feel more comfortable with that, go ahead. Spare chisels, feel more comfortable, go ahead. So the first thing, well, here, let me show you how to hold it. People get real technical about this. Where do I put the pressure, and how do I hold the iron, and how do I do this, and how do I do that? This is what I do right here. So I rest it against my palm, wrap my fingers around it, and I have the 2 fingers on the corner. I don't care if more pressure is going on the sides and these sides are getting sharpened more than the middle, because if it has that camber, I'm okay with that. People have the I don't have the roller on, but they make rollers for you to get that camber. So pressure on the outside doesn't matter to me. This is comfortable for me. That's the most important piece. You want to be comfortable while you're doing this. Don't get all crazy like, oh, I have to make sure I have even pressure, and, you know, how am I going to hold? Just grab an iron, do what's comfortable. Don't stress on that too much. The second piece is, hopefully I can show you sideways here. Yep. So the second piece is, what you do, you set it down, however you're going to hold it, and then you're going to rock it up till you feel it stop. Okay? I have too many bevels on this one now. So you hold it here, rock it up till it stops. You see it stop? Stops. Stops. Now, if you run into this iron has so many bevels on it. I don't know if you guys can see that. It has so many bevels. I haven't been able to find a primary on it. It just keeps going. Okay? But remember, angle doesn't matter because this is a bevel down iron. So I don't care. If I end up right here, I'm going to town. Doesn't matter. But if you have a primary, it's helpful. So what you do, set it there, find your primary, slightly up. That's it. I'll show you again. So hold it, find your primary, slightly up. You can go very slightly, you can go higher, just don't get crazy with it. Okay, don't get crazy. Find your primary, slightly up. And that will become muscle memory. But I don't want you guys to stress at what angle you put your hand. Don't stress on that at all, because remember, angles don't matter. This is bevel down, okay? Even if it was a bevel up, those tiny degrees of micro bevels aren't going to make that big of a difference that you really have to worry about it. Again, don't get crazy. But just keep that in mind. You're just having fun here. Woodworking should be fun, so keep it fun. Don't stress on the degrees. That'll come in time. Muscle memory will come in time. You're not going to mess anything up. You can go back to the grinder, okay? So one more time. Hold it. Find your primary, slightly up, okay? I'll show you it face down here. For the diamond plates, I use just a spray bottle with a little bit of Hone Right. I like Hone Right because it prevents rust, but if you're good at cleaning up and drying your stones afterwards and you don't need to worry about it, I use Hone Right because usually I hit this and I leave, and I leave the water on there. So hold it here. I don't care if you hold it this way, if you hold it that way, if you hold it at an angle, that doesn't matter either. Don't get technical. Remember, keep it simple. Hold it how you want to. Find your primary, slightly up. Well, I missed the primary. Find the primary, slightly up. And it doesn't take a lot. I feel a very slight burr, and that's all you want. You just want a I don't think you'll be able to see it in the video. I don't know if you guys can see just a very slight burr along there. If it's a small burr, you're done. If you feel it all the way across and it's a small burr, you're done. Take it to the strop, remove the burr on the strop. If you get a bigger burr, that what you want to do is I go like this and I go like that. Just take it down a little bit, okay? And then I go over to the strop. If you feel it roll it back over, that's fine, okay? Set it down, find your primary, slightly up again. Done. There we go, okay? Can you guys see that along there? There it is. I've used this one a lot for practice, but that's all it's going to be is just a thin line. That's your micro bevel, okay? You'll feel that burr. You go to the strop, take off the burr, and you're good to go. You've got a sharp iron, and that's only 1,000 grit. Try it. Try it. If you don't believe me, try it. You'll be able to shave wood. You'll be able to shave your arm. If you go from 1,000 grit, make sure you get a burr. If you don't get a burr, let me show you what happens. So, if you've used this one before and you've done micro bevels before, you find your primer and you go up slightly and you don't get a burr, you got to go slightly up higher. Because that means you've already done that micro bevel and you need to do a steeper one, okay? So here, let me see if I might be able to get a monster burr on this. I don't know if you guys can even hear the difference, but I could definitely see the difference in the slurry. There we go. Can you guys see that in the video? Probably not, but that's got a really big burr on it right now. So I lay it flat, slide it back, slide it down. Some people like to go across this way. Some people do whatever, as long as you keep it flat. If you lift up, then you're going to cause a back bevel. That's going to cause this to roll over, and you're going to have a back bevel, which is going to affect the plane. So when you do this part, keep it flat, pull it over, pull it down, okay? And you can always feel, all right, I'm good. I'm ready to strop with this, okay? So that's all it is. Let me show you with chisels. Chisels can get a little bit difficult. So for this one, I'm probably going to go one-handed because one-fingered because I don't know how I'm going to fit two on there. So just one, but you're doing the same thing. Doing the same exact thing. Is that enough? Yep. Do that. Find your primary, slightly up, go to town. That's it. Find it, slightly up, go to town. Don't get a burr, go slightly up higher, okay? Show you with a bigger one. Now, when these have handles, again, find something that's comfortable with you. If that handle gets in your way, find what's comfortable to do this free-handed. When they start getting wider and I can fit 2 fingers on there, I do, because you do want to try to keep chisels even. If a plain iron gets a little bit out of whack, I don't know if this one's a little bit out of whack. That one looks pretty good. I don't know if you guys can see that. It's okay if these get a little bit out of whack. If you start developing a crazy skew, then you're going to want to pay attention to that and put more pressure on one side to try to even it out. Okay, that would just be scooting to one side with 2 fingers, scooting the other side with 2 fingers. But you can always adjust that with the lateral on the plane. Again, if it starts getting too crazy, then you're probably going to want to take it back to the grinder and make it square again. Or throw it in one of these jigs and make it square again. Okay. But when you're freehanding, you're literally only doing the micro bevel. That's why I don't recommend doing the primaries freehanded. I definitely recommend using a jig for those. I don't care how long you've been freehanding. I'm always going to use a jig unless I'm doing this every time. Because if you want to do, okay, find primary, slide back. Find primary, slide back. That's what I would have to do. Even with how long I've been doing this, that's what I would have to do to redo the primary. And even then, I'd be worried about going out of square. So, don't worry about that too much. Don't worry about going out of square too much because you're just doing the micro bevel. If you feel the burr all the way across and you feel that over here, that the burr's a little bit bigger than this side, then you know next time, put a little bit more pressure on that side. Not a big deal. Chisels, same thing. I try to keep it as even as possible because with chisels, it matters a little bit more. But again, your primary bevel is really going to determine that. Okay, because you're just doing a very slight micro bevel. That would be a very slight difference in it being out of square. And you'll feel that on the burr. So, same thing. Get comfortable, find your primary, lift up slightly. Okay, I'll show you standing up here. I need a little bit more water. Nope, need to go a little bit higher. I used this one yesterday. And it doesn't take long. Remember, it doesn't take long. There we go. Okay, so I'm a little bit heavy on this side, so I need to put more pressure on that side. There we go. Can you guys see that? No. I feel a burr all the way across, corner to corner. With socket, you're going to want to be careful if it's going to lift up here. So if that happens, go off this way. Like that. Pull it back. Good. Okay. With chisels, if it rolls it a little bit, that's okay because you can remove it on the strop and you'll still be good to go. With plane irons, I try to avoid it just because it's a little bit easier to keep them flat on here. With chisels, sometimes not, depending on how they're shaped, depending on where that socket hits, all that kind of stuff. So, but again, don't stress on it. If you do get a monster burr rolled over the top, just go back to it, slightly up, a couple times. And there we go, the burr rolled back over. So then I'm going to hit the strop and I'm going to call it a day. You can always check it for square. I don't think this one's square. No, this one's way out of whack. That's why I have all those grinding marks in the middle. I was working on it. But that's it. So on the micro bevels, just remember, you don't do it in progression. You don't go from 120, 320, 500, 1,000 doing the micro bevel. Your micro bevel is only on your final stone. I've done it that way for quite a while now, and I've never had any issues with it. Okay. When you go to the strop, I do recommend using green compound if you're only going to 1,000. If you're going higher to 1,000, higher than 1,000, if you're going, 10, 13, 14, 15, 60,000, I don't recommend any compound at all because compound still sharpens. They do have some polishing ones out there too, but you can also just use bare leather.
Okay, so that's it. You saw it. Give it a try. If you're worried about using your real irons, grab some practice irons and test it out. But that's all it is. Keep it simple. If you aren't getting a burr, go a little bit higher. Don't try to do a micro bevel on every single stone, and really just keep it simple. Find the quickest way, find the most comfortable way, and move on. Sharpening should be one of the smallest things that we have to do in woodworking, and for some reason I feel like people make it just a huge thing. I use one stone and one strop for normal use. If you've got new stuff, then yeah, you're going to want to bust out the sandpaper, flatten the backs. If you got to regrind the primary, okay, bust out the sandpaper, regrind the primary, that's different. But for in-between everyday use, one stone, one strop, and I go on about my day. And I've never run into any issues. I never get hair out, except with my scrub plane, but that's a whole different story. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope that you found it helpful. That's the main reason that I wanted to start doing these videos. Like I said, there's a lot of guys on the Can I Have It group that have just asked questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start slowly adding videos onto this YouTube channel and hopefully answer some of those questions for more people out there than just the ones in the group. If you haven't gone to that group, I definitely recommend checking it out. It's seriously an amazing group. I don't want to go too crazy into it, but I have met so many friends on there, and I've had so many good interactions. There's just so many good people. It's just amazing. The bonus to me of that group is the tools. I enjoy spending most of my days talking to the guys, learning what they're working on, learning what tool they just got. They might post some tool porn up there for, I don't know if I can say that on here. They might post some really cool tools on there that I just like looking at, It really is a great group. It really is a great group of guys, too. So check them out. If you guys have any questions, feel free to throw them in the comments. If you guys are going to make some negative, nasty comments, I'm probably just going to ignore you because everything that I said on here has worked for me. So it doesn't really matter to me what you think because all of these topics are going to be argued and all of them can be argued. And somebody's going to say that one's superior and angle matters for this and angle matters for that. And if you're that experienced of a woodworker, I don't know why you're watching this video anyways. I just had to throw that in there. So, all right, you guys. Have a good one wherever you're at. Stay safe. Have fun. Have fun. If you're getting frustrated with sharpening, shoot me a comment. If you know me on Facebook, shoot me a message on Facebook, and I'll do my best to help you out. And I have no problem recording another video for you guys. So, without further ado, good night. Enjoy.